This is my life with albinism.
Now, this is my life with albinism.
And this is my life with albinism.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Life with Albinism podcast. We have our co-host Maya Warren with us.
Hey.
And we also have a special guest today from the UK. We're going to let her introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marvelin. Some people call me Marvy, or people call me Marv. I am from the UK, and it's very cold here right now. The weather's changing. I am a Jamaican British, born and raised in Jamaica, but I migrated to the UK from when I was very young. I also have OCA, ocular cutaneous albinism, just like Dale and the beautiful Maya.
Yes. So now tell us, Marvelin, how was it for you growing up as a child having albinism? What was your experience?
Well, for me, I was raised by my mom in the first 10 years. And it was okay in Jamaica. I had a wonderful family back home, and it was a lot easier. I never really faced the stigma as such because we as a community, we accept who you are as a person. But when I came to the UK, it was a different scenario. It was like, you're adjusting and adapting to a new country, and then you're starting a new school. So, and then that's where the stigma kicked in. So I've had my fair share of prejudice, bullying, stereotypes. There's everything that relates to albinism. I've experienced it myself firsthand. I'd done my primary years in Jamaica, so I didn't really have that strong accommodations in the schools because I didn't really know about albinism myself per se. I knew that my eyesight wasn't great. Um, Sorry, I do have a bit of a cold, so I do apologize. Um, it was very different. When I started school in the UK, that's when I had a lot of support, accommodations. I had extra time in my exams. They made my prints to be bigger for me to see, and I also had priority in my school where I had to sit in the front and which is allocated for me. So no one wasn't allowed to sit in that seat apart from me.
Yes, I had the same thing when I was in grade school, where
Mhm.
you're allowed to sit in the front, and that's super useful because you're able to see the board, you're able to see whatever's going on in the lecture and things like that. So that was very useful. So I know you mentioned that you did have some troubles, some bullying. That mostly happened during grade school, right? Like not really in adult years, but more so during the earlier years.
I
Like
had a few of it. I had a few of it in school and also family too. So some family members were really nasty, and some of them were just like making derogatory statements, especially with my eyesight. I will tell you what incident. What happened was, we have light sensitivity to the sun, right?
of course.
And I hit into the lamppost. Okay, I'm not. I have no shame of saying this. Okay, I hit myself in a lamppost, and they laughed at me. And that made me feel sad. Like, and even with my glasses as well, they used to tease me about that all the time. Even with my blonde hair, everything like
So now,
pretend.
so let's be clear a little bit, right? So it doesn't seem like they were bullying you so much as it was like playfully making fun of you, right? Because I'll give my own examples. Same thing with me, you know what I mean? Like my aunts, my aunts, my grandmother, they would all call me like light bright or something like that. Or if I
Yeah,
couldn't see something, they'd make a joke about me being blind. And
yeah,
it was always like it was like really like a playful thing. It wasn't like a malicious, I'm trying to tear down your ego type of thing. It was just like
mhm,
It was just like an easy joke to crack because you obviously knew I had visual impairment. Was it like that
Mhm.
for you, or was it more like a malicious type
It
of
was it was really malicious because
Mm.
some of it was to the point where um they have the experience where they never want to walk on the side of the road with me. Like for
Oh,
example,
okay. That's
Oh my
okay. Well,
goodness.
now I understand because what you're speaking of is not a playful joking.
no,
You're speaking
no,
of like
Oh,
a malicious intent type of
yes,
slander towards you from your
hmm
family, which is pretty
yes,
horrible because
yeah.
in my experience, I've never experienced that from family. From all the jokes
mhm,
that I've ever gotten from family, that oh you blind, oh you light bright or whatever, it was
yeah.
always
Some of
joking.
them,
It was always playful.
some of them. Okay, some it's not all my family members done this, so it's some, not all.
Okay.
And some of them even called me ugly. Some even said that I will never be married. Now, Dell, I'm a wife for 3 years, bro.
Oh wow.
Tell
Wow.
them.
I didn't even know you was married. I never
I
see that
am.
in
I'm
Tell
in
them.
your
married, bro.
posts.
I'm married as well. Yeah. I forgot to mention that in my intro. Sorry about that. But yes, I even was told by some family members I will never have a job. Yeah. I will never work. I will never be married. Yes. And that led me into, self-esteem issues a lot of the times. But um it was hard, man. And then growing up was, and the thing is, being the only one in my family who has albinism, man, it was tough because some people were like, yeah, like my uncle, were, right, God rest his soul, he would say, you know the film White Chicks,
Yes,
like
yes,
he would
yes,
joke
of course,
around
of
that, yeah, he
course.
would joke like that. I don't mind that, but the ones where you're maliciously making fun of me, laughing in my face, and say you're joking, but you're being malicious, that wasn't cool. That wasn't cool.
And you
Can
know,
I just
this is super interesting. And I
yeah.
kind of want to stay on this topic because this is a topic I've never even thought of in terms of has albinism brought malicious intent from your family? And I know
Mhm.
Maya, you've been a little bit quiet. What's your take on this, Maya? And have you experienced this yourself?
Well, first let me say, like, I think for us in America who have albinism, it's a bit different. I know people who've been physically bullied. I'll share mine in a second. But I did, I try to make it a point when it's people from other places around the world to kind of put myself in their shoes. And I did study some of Caribbean heritage a little bit. And, some of what you're describing, I'm not surprised by, given by some of the things that certain people in the part of the world believe
Mhm.
regarding albinism, very similar to what some people in Africa believe regarding albinism. And there are just certain parts in the world where it's not as tolerated or understood for whatever reason. So to hear that you got that from your own family, I'm sorry you went through that and experienced that. For me,
Okay.
um, I have not had anything malicious to that extent from my family. For me, it's just been more so if I had anything playful or anything, it's come from extended family, not my intermediate family. My
Okay.
intermediate family are my ride or dies, but extended family, there have been times where my grandmother has put people in their places when
Mm,
Yeah,
need
I've
be.
had
My
that.
aunt has put people in their places when need be because it wasn't playful. It was just straight up
Mhm.
rude and um sometimes in the Black community, I think
Yeah.
we I don't know what it is, but there's this thing of, oh, I might have said this about you and you really meant something by it, but you try to play it off when someone
Yes.
puts you in your place. And so I went through a lot of that. And I had one conversation with my one with a family member, and this individual was like, "Oh, I had no idea that me saying that was offensive. I had no idea that it was hurtful, and I'm sorry." And my grandmother also backed me up on that. And so most of the things that I've experienced have ended up being opportunities to educate people But it's never been to that extent where people have walked on other sides of roads for me. And I'm grateful that I have intermediate family who have been like my ride or dies. Most of the malicious things that I experienced came from the school system and out in public and things like that, but never to that extent with family.
It seems like you were going to say something there, Marvelin. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say, like, I was raised by two grandmothers. So my grandmother, both grandmothers raised me, one in Jamaica, one here. And both of them, loved me beyond albinism. I was the granddaughter. They kind of like I was underneath my grandmother's sleeves all the time. I was, no, seriously. And I think that's why my husband calls me old lady sometimes, because certain things I would say, um, he would say, you sound like your grandma and stuff like that. Um, no, I have like people on the outside, like friends that are in my corner with albinism and everything. But it was just some family members, like, they're so ignorant. And one of the things that I have learned, that people who are ignorant, they use ignorant as an access, yeah, to dehumanize, to destroy somebody for their own gratification, and thinking that they're gonna win. No, honey, you're not gonna win in this one, because you're gonna look like an idiot by doing that.
So let me ask you this, Marvelin. So when you were receiving this kind of malicious intent from your family for having albinism, how did that play against your self-esteem or your mental health and things like that? Like, did it tear
Oh,
down your ego, your
yes, it did.
self-esteem?
Yes, it did, because I battled depression for a long time. And I
Wow.
didn't know I had depression,
Wow.
believe me. And I felt, like you felt, you starting to believe the information that's given to you, and you don't know what is true from what is lie. So everything that's given to you, it's like I'm absorbing it and not knowing that it was doing so much damage to my mental health. So it became, I had self-esteem issues, you know, when it came down to my mental health. I just didn't, you know, I was so numb. I absorbed it. I became numb. When you put things in the freezer and you freeze it. That's how
Mhm.
I was. And then I started to throw out, and then I started to feel the pain of it. So 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And also, I had a bit of traits of PTSD as well,
Mhm.
because of the trauma of what I've been through. And there was many people that witnessed how my family was treating me, right? And a lot of people now are speaking up to me and say, you know what, Marvelin, like, you're quite strong for somebody that's experienced all those things. And you know what? I couldn't have done it like without the grace of God, honestly, because if it had not been for the grace of God upon my life, I don't, maybe I wouldn't be here talking to you guys today. Um,
So how did you overcome this? Like, how did you overcome the depression of how family and everyone was treating you? How did you overcome that?
I had to learn to forgive myself. That was one of the things I had to learn to do. And it took me some time, I'm not going to lie. And also, it took me some time to even love myself and to forgive myself and say, look, yeah, like, you can't change what's happened, but, you shouldn't, don't blame yourself all the time. It's not your fault, but forgive yourself in the process of healing. That helped me overcame certain things. And I've forgiven my family for what they've done or whatever, but I just keep my distance, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not holding any grudges against anyone, but I let it go, because it's not doing me any good by holding any grudges or being bitter. And like, it helped me a lot, and self-discovering for me, of who is Marvelin and what am I about. And it helped me. And I've learned a lot. I use albinism as my asset to grow, to never give up, and keep going the way that I am now, and just keep climbing. So all them things that's happened to me, all the bullying, the discrimination, the stereotype, you know, I I use that as a thing to be thick-skinned and just don't let it be a thing to dictate to my life. Because as far as I'm concerned, they're not the one who give me life. I have a purpose to be on this earth just like any normal melanated people on this earth. I have a right to be here just like them. So when somebody tries to ostracize you or to make you feel that you're not a part of something, I tell myself this: what's my ridicule has become my biggest blessing.
Yeah. And now here's the interesting thing about all of this, right? One thing that
Yeah.
I've always preached to people with albinism is, number one, don't care what anyone thinks, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
me in particular, when I was getting bullied with albinism and people were calling me names and calling me all kind of stuff, it never, ever, ever bothered me. And I think one of the biggest reasons why it never bothered me was because it always came from strangers anyway. So it was just
Yeah.
like, well, who cares what that random kid thinks? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it was always like a random classmate or a random kid in the school or some random person outside. It was never someone who I loved or cared about saying it. So it was that much easier to really be like, oh, well, who cares
Mm-hmm.
what you think? You know, so I teach that to people. But I think in your situation, it's a lot harder to overcome that because you're hearing it from your family. So at that
Yes.
point, you can't really go over that hurdle of, oh, well, who cares what they think? Because this is now your, just giving a random example, I'm not saying you, but,
Yeah.
this could be your mother saying it, your brother saying it, your sister, your whoever. So when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to someone like that, maliciously teasing you for albinism, then it becomes that much harder to say, well, who cares what they think? Because that's somebody you live with or have to deal with on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So I think that's what
Yeah.
makes it so much harder.
And
For
I
me,
will say, I will add one thing. Now I think about it, I did have a few moments with intermediate family, mainly my biological parents, where I was maliciously bullied, um, regards to my albinism, but in other areas. And I will say that the thing, I feel like I say this almost every episode, but it really comes down to like those formative years of childhood when it comes to albinism. If you have parents that instilled in you your purpose, your worth, they
mm-hmm.
affirmed your condition, they affirmed your culture within your condition, it's really easy to be like self-accept and don't care what people think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you come from a history of any sort of trauma, not even just related to albinism, any sort of trauma, whether it be chronic illness trauma or a physical trauma, whatever it is, it can affect how you view your albinism, because albinism literally touches every aspect of your life. It's not,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
if you catch a cold, well, it affects your health, but you're still able to heal from that and move on. Albinism
Yeah.
is here to stay. It ain't going nowhere. You can't wash this off. You can't fill in nothing with a Sharpie on your skin. And so when you're on the other side of that, it's easy to be like, don't care what nobody thinks, to people who care. But what I've learned to do is give grace to people who are still in that place, but also give them tools to learn how to not care so much, or even better, learn how to inwardly learn your self-worth, learn
Mm-hmm.
to be educated about your condition so that you have those tools to love yourself and then not care what people think. Because if you love who you were created to be, you know what your condition entails. Can't nobody tell you about your condition. Like, once I learned about my albinism, I don't care who came up to me. You said I was Puerto Rican or why I'm like, nah, baby, I know who I am. But you can argue if you want with yourself. I educated you, but if you want to continue to argue, I don't have time to dispense smoke where there doesn't need to be. And so I've learned to take joy in educating people who don't have it, but also like have grace for people who do have it and are still in that place where there's tension, bitterness, and frustration. Because there is a lot of trauma associated with albinism that doesn't even have to do with the condition itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in my
Yeah.
situation, mine was kind of similar to yours, Maya, where it's like you might get those little jokes here and there from family, but of course, playfully, not maliciously. But best believe if you were an outsider and try to tease or joke on me for my albinism in front of my family, they were definitely going to get on you for that. So that was the one thing that I did have was like with my family. Yeah, they could joke on me and play around and joke on my albinism all they wanted. It was all cool. It was all fine. There was nothing wrong with that. But the moment an outsider or somebody else, let's say somebody else near them or around us says it that isn't a part of that family circle, they didn't play that. They always stood up for me when it came to that. And that not just like my brothers and sisters, but cousins, aunts, uncles, mother, whoever.
I've had a few family members had my back still. It's not all my family members done like the malicious ones. I've got the Jamaican ones. Oh God, the Jamaican ones. Oh yeah, they really stand up for me. Like they really do, because they know like where I'm from, everybody sticks together, right? And you know, even the ones over here, they were like, Marv, we love you, like you know, you're beautiful, everything. And let me tell you, it's just like I'm glad to expect. I do have people make little comments, like jokingly, but not. Sometimes it's joking, but sometimes, right? Some people could say it's a joke, but they're really doing it in a malicious way and at their own expense, if you know what I'm saying. And so you could say, all right, you can turn around and say, oh, you make joke, oh, you're white and stuff like that. You know, you make comments about my skin and say whatever, and then you turn around and say, I was only joking. But then it's like, how would I know if you're joking or not? That's the question. How would I know if you're joking? So you could say something, yeah, like, okay, oh, Dell's just white and white privilege. He ain't black. He's a white guy, you know. And then you turn around and say, oh, Dell, I'm only joking. But then, no, you wasn't joking, because 9 times out of 10, guys, tonality carries a strong message. Yeah. So it's not what. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, tone is one of those parts of communication that's called meta communication. So there's verbal communication where we're talking to each other and we can hear it, but meta communication is often what's not said and what contributes to what we verbally speak, and that tone and your body language contribute to that.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes down to saying things that can be offensive, but then you turn it into a joke, you're still doing it in a malicious way, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, so, and you know, I agree with you, Marvelin. I think that happens a lot too, especially from outsiders or strangers. They'll tend to make a joke, and then once they see that you're upset about it, or that you heard them and you're reacting to it, then that's when they refer to, oh no, I was just joking, I was just playing. You know what I mean?
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah, that tends to happen a lot, you know. And one thing I'd like to ask you, Marvelin, so for someone else who's in your shoes and what you've described as a person being bullied by their own family members, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, you mean like the family members?
No. What advice would you give to the person who's suffering from
it? Okay, so what it is, your feelings are valued and valid. So you are valued and you are valid. Your feelings are valid in the sense of you're allowed to validate how you feel. Don't suffer in silence. Speak out about it. That's how I would say, don't suffer in silence, because that's what happened to me. And I kept it in, and you know, sometimes they might look at it and say, oh, you're looking for attention. No, honey, you hurt me. I'm going out there to get help. Go out there and seek help from people who are in your corner. Don't suffer in silence alone, because that's not good. When you don't speak of it, you're not going to heal from it. And that's what I had to do. I had to speak on it, and you know, to help somebody else that's going through the same situation, not out of sympathy to tell my story, but to help another person with albinism, especially like, okay, the internal aspects. Love's supposed to come from those who supposed to raise you and whatnot. But then it's not all the people that say their family mean you well, and that's something I've literally learned now, that not everybody that say their family, they'll say, "Oh, I'm Marvelin's cousin," or "I'm Marvelin, I'm related to," but we don't have a relationship because you stigmatize me and you make me feel like I'm nothing, okay? And you allow other people, you influence other people to do the same thing. So, as far as I'm concerned, for that, I would say to people who are struggling with this, especially parents, that think it's okay to bully your child or to do these things, you need to educate yourself what albinism is all about, and also love your child. Don't be ashamed of somebody that's just because they're born with a skin deficiency, or say if somebody has Down syndrome, then would you like somebody to bully your child, or would you want strangers to do what you do? So why would you do it on them? So it's not, I never really experienced the whole bullying, like from strangers per se. It was that the associates with family members who were influenced was doing all the wrongs, the stigma of it. But it hurt a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was angry, bitter, hated myself, all of that, But I thank God that I learned to forgive myself, to putting up with, in fact, not even put up with it, but to tolerate such barbaric and unspeakable act. I had to forgive myself. And I think it's harder as a child, because when you're a child, um, and you're born with albinism, it's like you're discovering your self-identity and you're at a crossroads. So it's a lot harder to really know who you are, because you're especially if you're a black person and your skin is light, and it's like, okay, what I know who my mom and my dad is and my family, but it's like they're treating me as such, like, because there's people in my situation that are going through this, and I want to really, really deposit and say, look, this is the time to really educate the schools and educate the parents. Listen, albinism is not what you think it is. Albinism is a condition. It's congenital. Any of you can carry the gene. That's something I've learned. Yeah, and the very thing that you're ridiculing me from, the very thing that you're stigmatizing me for, the very thing that you're dehumanizing me for, you lot are carriers of the gene. Because maybe 2, 3, 4 generations down the line, you could probably have a child with albinism, or maybe children with albinism. I've seen it happen. I've
Yes,
seen
and
parents do
and
it.
I think that the message that you're giving is super strong, because you're telling people like it starts with loving yourself, and I think that that's super
Absolutely.
important. So support yourself, love yourself, and like you said, have those conversations whether they're uncomfortable or not. Have those conversations, and I think once you build that self-love and that self-confidence, then it's so much easier to build that strong wall to just block out everything else, because nothing else that matters. Once you're happy and you're built that love within yourself, then it won't matter who says what, no matter where it comes from, family or not, it won't even matter at that point.
Hmm.
If I may add something, for those who have gone through trauma related to albinism, or just any form of trauma in general, like, it is very important that you find community and that you get therapy, like licensed professional help.
Right.
Here's
Hmm.
why. Um, if and I'm not saying this as someone who hasn't been to therapy. I use therapy and it has helped me. It's one of
Me
the major
too. Me
it is
too.
one
I've
of the
used therapy
major
too.
reasons. It is one of the major reasons why I learned to accept myself, but also unpack some of the things that people said and analyze it, like, is that true? Is that what God says about me? But in general, is that true? Not toss it away. So it will give you tools on how to not just process things regarding albinism, but how to deal with comments for people in life. Because everybody has different personalities types. Some people are more introspective, some people tend to be more less suppressive of certain things. So therapy is a tool that you can use to unpack some of the trauma from albinism and trauma in general, and it'll free you up. It'll give you resources to live a more fuller life without carrying on that baggage, as a parent, as an adult, as someone who aspires to be in a relationship. And it'll just equip you in ways that trying to carry all of that by yourself and suppressing it won't.
And that's what happened with
Absolutely.
me. That happened with me because I actually suppressed it, and thinking that no one would believe this was happening, thinking you're the only person going through this. I had CBT for when dealing with my mental health. I had cognitive behavioral therapy, and that helped me a lot. Believe me, it did, because they gave me like homework to do, like write this about yourself. And I don't know if y'all do this in America, like a spider diagram or
Well,
brainstorming.
it may be, yeah, we do
Like
something
where
sort of
like you
similar. I get
basically,
you.
yeah, so it's like you write like a circle and then you draw like lines around the circles kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So,
so what
so, so
what they
Marvelin, so not to cut you off, but we are running short on time. So before we end this, I want you to have the ability to tell people where to follow you, and where to find your social medias and the different things that you're doing.
right. So okay, let me start this off because I am the founder of Yell for Change. So my name is Marvelin Green. So for those, my socials for Yell for Change is there. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Also subscribe to Yell for Change YouTube channel also. My personal Instagram is Queen Marvy Green. So obviously that's my personal Instagram, but Yell for Change is the one that I use for albinism awareness. So this project that I do, I started like a year ago, and it's all about just bringing awareness towards albinism. So what this does is like I'm yelling and yellowing. So if the yell stands for yellow for albinism and yell for shout, and then the number 4 is the 4 E's: educate, empower, enlighten, and encourage. And obviously change is to put action into making changes towards the albinism community. So that's what Yell for Change is all about. So feel free to really like spread the word. Yell for Change is all about that, to help other people with albinism, to educate them also.
Definitely. And what's your YouTube is Yell for Change as well?
Yes. I am
Okay.
subscribed to your channel, by the way. I have subscribed. You have to
Oh,
change
thank
your
you. I'll
algorithm.
subscribe to yours too. And I want everyone here subscribe to both of our channels. Maya also has her channel. And Maya, what is your YouTube again?
It's simply Maya, Mayia. Feel free to check me out, subscribe. I have a podcast where I advocate for albinism, invisible disabilities, and invisible chronic illness.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys subscribe to Yell for Change. She has an Instagram and a YouTube. Also subscribe to Life with Albinism podcast. You can find us
Yeah.
on YouTube. You can also
Yeah,
find
I
us
love
on
it.
IG, life_with_albinism. Follow us all. A great episode, guys. I want to take the time to thank you both. Thank you, Marvelin, and thank you, Maya.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You're welcome.
Thank you, guys.